Are you stuck in the same old routine at work? Do you find yourself hitting a creative wall, unable to see beyond your current perspective? It's time to break free and unlock the power of fresh perspectives. David Guthrow here with Discovering Fresh Perspectives, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Sharon Tewksbury-Bloom in Arizona. So welcome, Sharon.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Sharon, you mentioned AI is something for everybody, and of course it's one of those topics we hear about it so much, and there's so many different things going on. So why is this something that you're passionate about?
Yeah, it's interesting because it is something that I feel like we've been hearing about forever, and it's been in sci-fi and in pop culture for a long time. But it feels like just overnight, it's suddenly actually in our everyday. It's in the tools that we're using all the time, especially in the work world. It's just like every week now, I'm getting another announcement about how artificial intelligence has been embedded in the tools that I'm using. So I think it's a good time, if people haven't already figured a little bit out about what it all means and what this is, to really get some context, understand what this is, because it's now in everything every day that people are using.
So, Sharon, how does one plow through the morass of information that's out there? Because as you say, it's everywhere. But where do you start to understand it?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it is overwhelming right now. It's like every tool has a new webinar or everyone's got a new newsletter. It's very difficult to find what's reasonable to listen to. I love podcasts, so I do have a couple of podcasts that I've been listening to. There's one called AI for Humans, which it's funny, it's more carefree, but it's actually got a lot of good information and insights and kind of helps keep you up to date with what's new. There's also one for people who consider themselves more creative that's called AI for Creatives, easy to remember. And they are very thoughtful, and they give a great example of how AI is entering fields that may not traditionally be thought of as technology fields, like fashion and like marketing and copywriting and graphic design.
So perhaps you could tell me a little bit about your work and how AI informs it or morphs it or disturbs it.
Yeah, it does all those things. So I am a facilitator and an organizational development consultant, which a lot of people who aren't in the same work as me don't necessarily know what that means. I do not organize people's closets. I'm actually very bad at that. I mostly help people figure out how to work with each other more effectively, how to use tools and systems to do their work efficiently and effectively. So that's one reason why I've been paying so much attention to AI, because people use more and more technology in their work. And the way that we use technology either helps us or hinders us. And so, for instance, recently I was helping a university and one of the departments who's figuring out how to do their strategic planning. And I often help people with strategic planning. And they came to me and they said, "Hey, we think we might be able to use ChatGPT, which is a new AI tool." And they said, "We think we might be able to use it to write our strategic plan."
Oh.
And I got all excited. And I was like, wow, this is the first time I've been asked that. And I play with ChatGPT all the time. I use it to write things for me, but I haven't been asked to use it for a strategic plan before. So I was so stoked. And I said, "How are you using it right now? How is this evolving from how you're using AI and ChatGPT in your work?" And they said, "Oh, we haven't tried it."
Oh.
So this is like a great example of how people hear about the tools. They're like excited to know that these tools exist, but they haven't actually figured out how to use them. But it's like a lot of people sense that they might be able to use them in their work, but they haven't actually started doing it. So we did this project together. We actually did use ChatGPT to help write their strategic plan. And I can talk about kind of how we did that. But um, it was fun because, here I was being asked by the client, and the client hadn't even played with the tool yet. So it's been fun to kind of just play with it and explore and see what's possible.
So could you say a little bit about like that's a really good example. You said in strategic plan. I happen to have been facilitating myself for about 40 years, so I'm quite curious in this. So about this. So how did you actually use it to help them write their strategic plan?
Yeah, one thing that ChatGPT and other AI tools like it are really good at is, well, a couple of things. These are built on large language models. So they look for patterns in language, and they look for, basically they're all just a tool to predict what the next word should be when you're writing. So very similar to if you're sending a text message and your phone suggests words that might be the word you're looking for. Basically, all these new tools are just really advanced versions of that. And so if you give it some information, it will be very good at understanding how you like to write and how to format data and things like that. So one thing we did was we took the university's strategic plan, because the university had already worked on a 5-year plan, and we uploaded that as a PDF into ChatGPT, because if you have the paid version, you can add documents. So we uploaded it and we said, okay, we are now trying to write a department's plan to align with this plan. And we want it to highlight, these 3 main areas. And we would like you to draft, what are the, if you're looking at, 3 areas like sustainability and maybe investing in research facilities and I don't know, increasing diversity, equity, and inclusion. Let's say the department had already been talking about those 3 things. We say, how can you write a department plan that would align with what's already in the university's strategic plan? And so it does a remarkable job of actually creating a whole draft for you of, how about this? And it will suggest, and it writes in the exact same style as the university plan. And so it was interesting because as a consultant and as a facilitator, I think a lot about, where's the benefit in something like strategic planning? Is the benefit just having a plan that is drafted that you can check the box and say, look, we have a plan now? I tend to come from the school of OD that's all about, the benefit is actually in the thinking work that happens in the room while you're struggling through trying to figure out what should go into your plan. And so this was kind of an interesting experiment to do with the department, because we said a lot of people get hung up on the writing part of the plan. Like, oh, but how are we going to find the time to like write this whole plan? And I'm like, look, the robot did it for you in literally 30 seconds. They can write the plan for you. Like, the writing is not what we need to be consternating about. I was like, if you can figure out the thinking part, like, where do you actually want to put your focus for the next 3 years? If you all can get on the same page about the thinking, then we can throw that into the robot, and the robot can write it in, 3 minutes or less. So don't worry about that. Don't worry about if you have the time to do the writing. It'll do the writing. Just worry about, are you on the same page about where your priorities are?
That's brilliant. I love that. I mean, I've been using it in my own work where it's been a meeting that's been online and people have been in breakout rooms creating things and pulling those documents together into one document and saying, okay, chat GBT, categorize these, or what would those be? And, in the past, I've done that manually. I can do that, but it takes forever.
Yeah.
And it's never quite 100%, but wow, does it ever save a ton of time?
And it does help if you've got some experience or expertise that you can bring to the machine. So for instance, I watched a YouTube video from a qualitative research scientist, and he was able to tell you how to use the correct language when using ChatGPT to say, I would like to do qualitative coding of these interviews that I have conducted with research subjects. And so I did interviews for people to ask them about how they do their planning. And then I put that into ChatGPT and used his language around this is what I want from you, machine. I want you to act like a qualitative, research evaluator, and I want you to create codes. And then one thing that was really great, because there are some risks and pitfalls to ChatGPT, but one thing that he did, which I thought was brilliant, was he asked for specific quotes to be pulled out of the interviews for each of those codes. So the same thing, like if you did a strategic planning session, maybe you were transcribing it, maybe you led it on Zoom or you recorded it. If you've got that data, that transcription, you can have this machine crunch all that data for you. But if you're strategic about it, you can say something like, please pull, 3 quotes for each theme that you've identified. And that way, not only can you do a check and balance of making sure, okay, was that quote actually a quote in the transcript? Because you can do control find, make sure that that was real, kind of check the machine's work. But then you can also pull it back to the source material. What did the participants actually say? And why are we saying that that's part of this theme around accountability, for example?
And that's so great too, where, you see a document and a quote is pulled out and put in the middle of the document as a highlight. It's great for that. I was just thinking, I think we have to get much better at being clear thinkers about what it is we're asking ChatGPT to do.
Yeah.
And a simple example, one of my clients wanted to have, it's a 3-day meeting, and wanted to have people sitting at different tables, different times. And instead of being accused of setting up, that's what's the hidden agenda behind having so-and-so with so-and-so, just they fed it into Chat GPT so that there'd be different people at different tables that really mix it all the time. But because they didn't ask the question quite right, it took them 3 or 4 times to get it to do what they wanted to do. So I think, or many people are concerned about, is this going to do all our work? I don't think it is. I think we have to be sharper in our thinking about what we're asking it to do and using language that makes sense to it. And probably it makes sense to other people as well, but we're sloppy with it. So, I love the precision that comes from it.
Yeah, and what you put into ChatGPT is referred to as a prompt. And on the AI for Creatives podcast, they've talked about this new role of a prompt engineer or a prompt artist or prompt, developer, because there is a lot of creativity, critical thinking skills. There's a lot of skill that goes into how do you design the right prompts. And I feel like those of us in that facilitation field, our background just aligns so perfectly with this, because that's what we do a lot, is think about what kind of question would open up people's minds to what's possible. And that's the same kind of fun thing you can do with ChatGPT, is like, what kind of question or what kind of inquiry or instruction could I give that would bring together all of this data in a new way that would generate some new possibilities that we haven't seen before?
And I've heard of people using it to get, what are some interview questions I should ask of this person, and generate a list of questions like that as well. So a lot of people are concerned about having their jobs disappear as a result of artificial intelligence. What are your thoughts on that? What have you observed, and what do you imagine the future might look like?
Yeah, I think there are jobs that will disappear. I do think there's also new jobs that will be created. So I think it's similar and different to a lot of times where we've seen massive changes when new technology came in. I mean, I think this is as massive as when the internet started being used in the workplace. We've seen that the internet and what's available with the use of the internet has completely reshaped a lot of people's jobs. It has changed how people buy things, how people interact. So I don't want to understate it. I do think that AI is going to massively reshape how work gets done and how people think about work in the future. But I do think there will be jobs created with that, including these whole prompt designers, prompt engineers. I think there will be a lot of people. And this is part of why I wanted to to talk about AI for everybody, because I think right now there's been a lot of technology minded people who've been in the AI space doing all the behind the scenes development. But now that AI is going mainstream, now it's time for artists and lawyers and business people and all different kinds of people to figure out how AI is best used, best regulated, best taught. There's all these different aspects of actually incorporating AI into our work that we need everybody else to get involved with.
So I'm going to, this may not be fair, but what the heck? I'm going to toss a number of sort of professions or pseudo professions at you and to say, so how might they use AI? And I'm going to do them so quickly you don't have time to go to Chat GBT and ask the question.
Great.
Okay.
Perfect.
So let's say a stay-at-home parent, a mom or dad looking after the kids. How might they use AI?
Well, that one's easy. You take a picture of what's in your fridge and you say, what meal can I make for picky 5-year-olds for tonight with what's in here? Or like my best friend has 5 children. 3 of them have very severe allergies and medical issues. So being able to plug that information into ChatGPT and say, please create a meal plan and a shopping list that relates to it for the whole week based on this would be super easy with ChatGPT.
Okay. So I didn't mean to send you one that was so easy to start with. Okay. How about a dog owner or a cat owner?
Cat owner. I am a cat owner. You can have a poem about your cat created by ChatGPT. This is kind of an adaptation of what I did for my niece, but you could tell them like I have a cat named Sapphire. She's got beautiful blue eyes. She's, got cool stripes. I could give them all the details and then have custom poetry created about my cat who I'm obsessed with.
Okay, ready for another one?
Yeah.
Okay, yoga instructor.
Yoga instructor. Well, definitely anything that involves writing. So a yoga instructor usually needs to market themselves. So they're going to want to use it for copywriting. They can also have it create, custom flows or meditations using ChatGPT.
Okay, that's good. I'm going to give you another one. A friend of mine is a very active octogenarian and who claims he only retired 3 years ago. So how might someone who is an older man or woman who, sees himself as maybe past technology, how might someone like that use AI?
Yeah, one thing that I think is sort of counterintuitive, but I think if you can lean even harder into the technology, which would be to get the app on your phone, because there's a ChatGPT app. And what I love about the app is that you can use voice activation with the app instead of having to type. And so I know I used to work with a lot of older adults who start to lose their eyesight. They might have issues finding things as much. They're actually doing experiments with things like ChatGPT where there's actually an app called Be My Eyes. And so you can take a picture of where you're standing and say, I'm trying to find the bus stop from here. Can you tell me how to get to the bus stop? And using Google Maps and everything that's already on Street View, the app will actually be able to pinpoint your exact location, be able to know where the closest bus stop is, and give you directions there. And just tell you like to take another picture when you're at the end of the street. Okay, turn right, take another picture when you get to the end. So if you still want to have more freedom of movement and accessibility, the level of accessibility tools that are being built into AI is just incredible for people as they might have lower mobility or accessibility.
That's a great one, helping people get around so they don't feel trapped where they are. Okay, last one. I have, I'm not coming at this from a position of self-interest whatsoever, just concerned about other people. So, what about the parent of a teenager or early 20-year-old who knows everything?
um, Well, I hate to break it to you, but one thing that AI is not the best at, or at least ChatGPT is not the best at staying on top of things in terms of the latest news. So I'll give you the red herring there of don't ask it questions like, what does my teenager mean by that's whack? Or, like it's not great at that. Um, what it is great at is helping you to synthesize your own knowledge. So maybe you could go head to head with your teenager about what you're great at. That's an extra challenging one. You might have stumped me on this.
At last. My list was getting shorter and shorter. So for the average person, Sharon, if there's one or two tips you could give them in terms of how to approach or embrace AI, what might those tips be?
Yeah, I think first I just want to acknowledge that having a healthy dose of fear or anxiety about AI and new technology is good. I mean, I think that I'm not just because I'm optimistic and a bit of an evangelist for AI and technology doesn't mean that I'm not also a realist about the fact that ChatGPT and AI do come with risks. They do come with concerns. There's privacy concerns. There's intellectual property concerns. There's lots of things that we need to be more aware of. But that's actually why I think that everybody should increase their awareness at least a little bit and do the fun part of playing with it. Because I think, for instance, let me step back for a second. As I mentioned, it's mostly just been tech people that have been involved with AI, which means you've got a bunch of engineers sitting around making a lot of decisions about how ChatGPT should be built. Well, they may or may not also be parents or ethicists or have a legal background. And so the more we have people with diverse experiences, with different kinds of knowledge starting to use these tools, the more we'll realize what the additional regulations or protections or other things we need to put in place are to make it work for more people rather than just, sort of the default settings, if you will, that came when it was only engineers sitting in a room deciding how these tools should be built.
So let me just land on that just a little bit before we go on to your other two tips, which is how do you determine between the fear mongering, which is out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which may not be based in anything other than just people's opinions, and those that have genuine concerns. How do you make the distinction between those two? Like these days, it's always an issue on the internet and social media. Who do you listen to? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you know they're the ones to listen to? Any thoughts on how to distinguish between those two categories with respect to AI?
Yeah, I do think it's good to already build your trusted sources. So I think even more so as AI is being used to write things on the internet, just finding a random article on the internet that you don't know the author, you don't know the source, you don't know the publisher, even more than it is now, that's going to be a problem in the future that you don't know if you can trust it. So now is a great time to really curate who is in your LinkedIn network? What kind of professional associations do you join? What kind of even friends and neighbors do you trust with their opinions? Trust your gut on who are the people you want to surround yourself with and what kind of sources do you want to get content from, and look to those first for information about this, because there is going to be more and more noise, if you will, out there, because AI makes it so easy to generate new content that what's already a problem is going to be a bigger problem in the future of things that are just untrustworthy or they're just a waste of time. They're just fluff. They weren't really worth reading or listening to.
Great. That's very helpful. So because that was such a great explanation, just one more tip. I was going to go for
Okay.
three. I'm going to back off on that. Just one more would be great, Sharon.
Yeah, I'd say start with something easy. ChatGPT is a free tool. So you could use it for something that doesn't really matter, that's not sharing any private data. So if you want to have it write a poem about your dog, or you want it to, give you 5 meal tips for people who like mushrooms, Like just play with it with something that doesn't matter at the beginning, get a feel for it, get a sense of what it can do, what it can't do. And then you can start to incorporate using it in more serious ways or in ways that have greater consequences.
Great suggestions. So, Sharon, I'd like to thank you very much, especially for giving me some tips on how I can use it with strategic planning going forward. There's no commission involved, unfortunately, but I will offer my appreciation. And it's been David Guthrow here with Sharon Tewksbury-Bloom on Discover Fresh Perspectives. Who knows what we're going to discover next? Subscribe now, because on Fresh Perspectives, every episode is an opportunity to explore new horizons and redefine what's achievable.